And a very warm welcome. You're joining us here at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24, where we have dialogue on countless number of issues, developments, not just here in Sri Lanka, but across the world. Tonight, we will be not only focusing on Sri Lanka, but developments across the world, where attention is driven to from around the globe. We've seen that the conflict in the Middle East has destroyed countless number of lives and the horrific scenes from Gaza and Israel. But to understand what's going on, how we're going to see the developments here come to a peaceful solution, we've invited to our studios to discuss all this and how Sri Lanka is going to be as a small state in the middle of developments around the world. Ambassador of Israel, based in New Delhi but accredited to Sri Lanka. A very warm welcome to you, Ambassador Reuven Azar. A very warm welcome, and Ayubowan from Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Indeewari. It's an honor to be hosted here at Hyde Park.
Ambassador, your visit here is in line with presenting credentials to the President, and you've met a number of officials here in Sri Lanka before concluding your visit. While we thank you for your time here, we'd like to understand the nature of discussions you've had.
Well, we had very good discussions. As you know, we cooperate. We are both small countries, but we have very good cooperation on things like tourism, guest workers, defense, high-tech, agriculture. I covered these issues with your esteemed representatives, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Chief of Police, the Minister for Public Security and Tourism. Very fruitful discussions, the Speaker of the Parliament, and we concentrated on follow-ups on what we can do in order to enhance this relationship.
What is the focus from the Sri Lankan side on the nature of cooperation ties with Israel?
I think that there is a focus in the last year mainly on the issue of guest workers, because we've been increasing the number. We are now up to 20,000. Israelis are very satisfied with the work of Sri Lankan workers. They earn about $1,500 per month. It's a pretty good income, and they supply very good work, either as guest workers or as caregivers, or workers in agriculture, in other sectors. We are now expanding that to sign agreements also for employment in the field of services. So I think that next year we're going to see more workers coming to Israel.
Does that mean the economic situation there in Israel provides for foreign workers currently, and the expansion of jobs, especially for countries like Sri Lanka?
Yes, we are. Israeli economy, despite the challenges, despite the war, is expanding. Actually, in the last 2 quarters, our economy is expanding at the rate of between 3 to 4% at the annual level. And we have investments from all over the world, especially in the high-tech sector in Israel. We just signed a company with the name of Wiz that deals with cyber solutions. AI was sold for $32 billion to Google. So foreign investments are continue flowing into the country despite the war. We have a lot of investments also in our defense industries, and our defense industries are not only supplying to our defense forces, but many armies around the world because of the change in the situation and the war in Europe, the expansion of the Abraham Accords with our Arab neighbors. We are supplying to them as well. So, and also the developments in the field of energy. Israel is developing its offshore gas fields, and we have also new international investors, lately SOCAR from Azerbaijan and British Petroleum, that entered into a new plot to untap Israeli gas. So the economy all in all is doing pretty well, and therefore we need more workforce.
Does this mean there have been talks with Sri Lanka in terms of improving trade or investments bilaterally?
Absolutely. We are trying to see, first of all, that we have more interaction. For example, in the field of agriculture, I heard from the Minister of Agriculture that is interested in introducing more modern technologies into different traditional sectors here, like rice, for example. So there are methods that we can use. We are now following up, trying to see what are the things that Sri Lanka is interested in. We also contemplated the model we developed with India, because there the Indian government has established centers of excellence throughout the country, bought a huge Israeli irrigation company, and in each such center...
Relation companies.
Irrigation.
Irrigation,
yes.
Yes.
So these modern irrigation companies are producing technologies that are known all around the world. So they have been, they purchased one of them, and they invested about $4 million in each center. Right now they have 32 centers, and they concentrate in fields like fruits, vegetables, cut flowers, and these centers basically supply subsidized seedlings to the farmers and give also extension services, training. So one of the ideas is maybe doing such a trilateral scheme here or bilateral. And the challenge is to bring international finance in order to try to see whether such centers can be established. So all these things are being discussed, and I hope we will bring it to fruition soon.
Israel's developments in agriculture have we've seen the developments over the past decades, and also when we talk about new technology, AI, but in especially the agriculture sector, how do you see Sri Lanka and Israel working together, especially in not just importing but sharing the know-how and the technology for rapid advancement here? Right,
so there are basically two main sectors in agriculture. The first is the production and how to enhance production by taking more crops from the same plot of land. And the second is the post-harvest side. After you increase the crops, how do you create a situation in which the merchandise doesn't get lost in storage? How do you package it modernly? How you market it, etc. So all these things are being discussed. We can do it both in the governmental channels, but also in private sectors. There are already Israeli companies that are being represented here in Sri Lanka, like Netafim, for example. They have a representative here. And, you know, we can do much more. We are trying to concentrate on how to achieve more cooperation.
Is that possible with the ongoing tensions in the Middle East, the war and the Middle East being the center of attention? Just this week we've seen tensions escalating to unprecedented levels.
Well, actually, it is possible, and I'll tell you why. Because, you know, I don't know how much attention people have been giving to the region, but we've seen in the last 18 months that after Israel was massively attacked, not only by this atrocious attack on the 7th of October, in which the terrorists, you know, murdered, raped, and burned our citizens, but also by other proxies of Iran that have been firing at us thousands and thousands of rockets. Israel has been able to decimate most of these threats. We retaliated against Iran. We decimated the force of Hezbollah in Lebanon to the extent that the political reality in Lebanon and Syria has changed. And now we have peace in our northern border, and that allows us to concentrate in the threat of Hamas. And that means that our economy actually is back on track. And we are capable of traveling, we're capable of producing. The Israeli economy is doing very well, despite the fact that the Gaza situation wasn't solved yet.
Ambassador, if we turn to the situation in Gaza, as you've mentioned here, just this week there has been renewed attention, as I mentioned earlier. The US, Canada, the United Kingdom rather, have called for Israel to take a step back, to have restraint, especially since the situation in Gaza is escalating, and there are estimates by the UN that some 14,000 are at risk of starvation, and there are a massive number of atrocities being carried out. But I understand when you talk about October 7th, where the world was shocked again, some 1,200 attacked overnight. But how are we going to see the situation there in the Middle East de-escalate? What role does Israel plan to play here and de-escalate the situation as we see massive atrocities and war crimes happening there?
Well, Israel is not committing any war crimes whatsoever. We are acting according to international law, and we are defending ourselves according to norms that we have established and actually are being monitored by our justice system. So Israel has done more than any country in the world to avoid collateral damage and to avoid hurting of civilians. The challenge that we have is that Hamas has taken not only Israeli hostages, but has taken the entire population of Gaza Strip hostage. They are hiding behind them. They are building their headquarters under hospitals. They are sequestrating the international aid that we have facilitated their movement into the Gaza Strip. And we have a challenge to change that situation. Now, our cabinet has decided very clearly two aims. The first is to bring back our hostages. We have been able to bring back 195 out of 254. And to defeat Hamas, to be sure that in the future Hamas won't be able to attack us again. Now, that's a very difficult balance to have, because if we advance very fast to defeat Hamas, we risk our hostages. So we've been using a tactic in the last 18 months of military power, but also negotiation. And in this combination, we've been able to decimate the power of Hamas, but they are still on the ground. So we can end this war today. The only thing that has to happen is that Hamas has to face its defeat, bring us our hostages back, and renounce power. This is what the world wants. The world doesn't want Hamas to stay in power in the Gaza Strip. And we are cooperating with the international community. We understand the concerns, of course, but we are monitoring the humanitarian situation. And in the moment that we saw that the supplies in Gaza are dwindling, we renewed the humanitarian assistance. So Israel is acting very responsibly here. There is a lot of disinformation, I must tell you, including in UN reports, because the people that are writing these reports in the UN are highly biased. They are being appointed by countries that are hostile to Israel. And there is a UN organization called UNRWA that actually employs Hamas operatives. So we have a challenge. The UN bodies, some of them, are compromised by Hamas, are ruled by Hamas. And we have to create a distinction here. We have to be very clear. If the international community, especially international organizations, want to be involved in a positive way, they have to disassociate themselves from Hamas, because terror cannot be accepted, and it's not in the interest of anybody, especially not for the future of Gaza and for the future of the Palestinian population, that terrorist organization will continue ruling the Gaza Strip.
Thousands of innocent civilians are targeted here. Thousands and thousands of innocent children, women, in the name of this war against Hamas. But how do you think this situation where civilians are involved and what the UN calls a massacre, that the UK, Canada, now the West calls atrocities, can be avoided?
It's very easy to use terms that are inaccurate. Israel is not targeting civilians. Israel is targeting the terrorists.
But Ambassador,
and
many civilians are hundreds of thousands of civilians.
It is very tragic. First of all, that Hamas is hiding behind civilians and using them as human shields. This is a double war crime. They are firing indiscriminately at Israel, trying to hurt civilians in Israel, while hiding behind civilians. This is completely unprecedented. You have a situation in which a terrorist organization is building its headquarters under a hospital that is supposed to be a safe zone that cannot be used to serve terrorists. So they are taking advantage. They are thinking that they are going to manipulate the world by placing themselves in places that they are not supposed to be, like inside ambulances, using people, disguising them as press, okay? So they are using all these malign tactics in order to defend themselves, in order to hurt their own people. Now, Israel, unlike any country in the world, has been doing most of, many things that nobody else has done, like evacuating people to safe zones, like using tactics of knock on roof in order to evacuate buildings before we bomb them. And when you look at the numbers, actually, the ratio of civilian casualties compared to the number of terrorists is very low compared to other urban warfare zones, like, for example, the fight in Mosul. So there you had a ratio of 1 terrorist for 8 civilians dead. In Gaza, it's 1 to 1.5 or 1 to 2. And that means that Israel is doing successfully efforts not to target civilians. Of course, this is a disaster. And we would like to prevent the tragic results, but Hamas is responsible, and Hamas has to be defeated for this situation to end and for this war to come to a culmination.
Is there a peace deal or a ceasefire being brokered currently with U.S. intervention?
Yes, we are coordinating with the U.S. and other players in the region to try to see whether we can achieve peacefully the result that we want to achieve, meaning the release of the hostages and Hamas renouncing power in the Gaza Strip. And so far, Hamas is refusing. So because of the refusal, Israel is stepping up its military pressure. Only through military pressure we've been able to bring back hostages, because Hamas didn't want to release any hostages at all. So military pressure is necessary. It's a very difficult situation. It's very tragic, but we are determined to defend ourselves and to bring to peace that will create a permanent situation in which Hamas cannot attack our state again.
We also saw on the BBC that former Israeli Prime Minister had called Israel's actions in Gaza very close to a war crime. How do you, Ambassador, as a diplomat representing your government of Israel, you've been with the government in some important positions. You have also been as a security advisor for foreign policy at the National Security Council as well, a very important role that you've played. How do you look at this situation, especially one of your former prime ministers calling it a war crime?
Well, he didn't say war crime. It's close to a war crime. Look, we have to strike a very difficult balance here, because what Hamas is doing is manipulating any norm written in the book in order to survive as a terrorist organization. So, of course, that is very difficult when you face a situation in which you have to target a terrorist that has children around him. So you have a dilemma here. Are you going to target a terrorist knowing that people around there are going to be killed? According to international law, it is permissible. According to international law, you have to apply the amount of military force against the nature of the threat. When you have terrorists that are killing civilians, raping, burning, you have the right to eliminate them, even when they hide behind civilians. So, of course, we try to do whatever we can in order to take the civilians out of harm's way. And we've been doing that time and again. But people have to understand, we have to defend ourselves and we cannot surrender to terrorism. And therefore, we are very clear. We are going to follow international law, but we are not going to renounce our right to defend ourselves. There is a debate inside Israel.
But why is the UK, France and Canada threatening sanctions against Israel?
Well, look, you have to ask them. I think that they don't realize what the situation is on the ground. I think that they are rushing into judgment. I think that what they are doing is completely immoral, okay? And they haven't been tested the way that we are tested. Israel is under a threat that is uncomparable. And the fact that people are rushing to judge us, sometimes because of political pressures. Look, we don't have to be naive here, okay? There are certain political balances that these people have to do in their own countries because they have pressures. So they are hasty to draw conclusions on our behalf. We are not seeking permission from them. We have to do what we have to do. We are confident on our morality. Our military, by the way, is being monitored by our lawyers and by our legal system.
But that's not
that is
what
a
the
Western
UN says.
Legal system. So we have our standards. Our standards, actually, are much higher than the standards that the Brits had when they operated in Iraq or Afghanistan. So we are not going to take lessons from them. We are not going to take lessons from them.
What will these sanctions be like, and how will Israel...
I don't know.
Does this mean Israel does not care about what the West
What
has
we
to
care
say?
is about surviving and about thriving. We have a right to defend ourselves, and people are not going to dictate us how to do it. We have the confidence to do it in a legal way, in a moral way, and we are not going to receive dictates from anybody, including not Canada, Britain, or any other country.
And the United States?
The United States is completely in sync with us. The United States supports our operation. When President Trump visited the Middle East and he went to many Arab countries, he didn't say at any moment that he's going to restrain or stop Israel from defending itself.
Israel, the UN says Israel continues to ignore calls for justice and to allow aid into Gaza. And this is the latest concern of the international community.
Well, first of all, we have to take a look at what is the UN. There are different bodies in the UN. Some of the bodies in the UN, unfortunately, because of the composition of the UN and the fact that you have 22 Arab states and 57 Muslim countries, we have only one Jewish state, we are outnumbered, and they appoint people that are completely biased, and they generate biased reports. Number one, we monitor the situation on the ground in a task force with other countries, and we measure how much food enters into Gaza. Rest assured, there is no starvation in Gaza, despite all the pictures you are going to see. And people in Gaza in the last 18 months have been receiving food. Otherwise, they would starve. They didn't starve. So we know what is the situation. We know that after the last ceasefire, 22,000 lorries of assistance entered into the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, Hamas stole them, and they are selling them to the population instead of giving it free of charge. And when we saw that the assistance is dwindling, we reopened the possibility to facilitate entrance of international aid. And therefore, Israel is going to continue to act responsibly. People in Gaza are not going to starve, but we are going to continue our operation until we achieve the goal of bringing back our hostages and making sure that Hamas won't constitute again a threat against our state and will release its grip from the population, the Palestinian population, so the Palestinian population can have a future. Imagine they were ruled for the last 18 years by a terrorist organization that was oppressing them, punishing them, killing them, radicalizing them. They also deserve a future. If we fail in removing Hamas, there will be no future for Gaza.
But Ambassador, with all due respect, what future for a nation that is destroyed by war with so many casualties that we see, women, children, brutally attacked?
It's terrible. They are brutally attacked by their own leadership, by these terrorists. They are the victims of their rulers. And what we have to do, if we want a future for them, is to get rid of the terrorists, to bring a decent government to Gaza. Not an Israeli government, by the way. We are not interested in governing Gaza. We left the Gaza Strip in 2005.
You mentioned earlier, Ambassador, that the operation will continue. Does this mean the ceasefire talks or talks for mediation will not see any fruitful solution?
We hope they do. Mm-hmm. We are ready to end the war today. The only thing that has to happen is that Hamas gives the hostages and renounces power in the Gaza Strip. If they refuse to do so, there will be continuation of military pressure, yes.
We'd like to also talk about the region itself. Mm-hmm. The region shaken by the conflict there, and as I mentioned earlier, the horrific scenes that we continue to see day after day, which makes the entire world worried about the future of the people in Palestine. How do we see the region really working to establish peace and security?
Well, you're right that since 2011, when there was chaos in the Middle East, there were civil wars in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, in other places in the Middle East, and in Sudan, and we're seeing hundreds of people, thousands of people dying. In Syria, there were more than 500,000 casualties. Israel was not connected to that. In Sudan, in the last 2 years, 150,000 people have died. Nobody is covering that. There are a lot of challenges because this chaos has created a vacuum. And in this vacuum, you have a lot of radical forces that are coming up. Shiite radicals and Sunni radicals. Radicals like ISIS, radicals like the ones that after the defeat of Hezbollah are now creating havoc in Syria. They are killing minorities. For example, the those forces that support the new Syrian president. They have been ethnic cleansing the Alawites, the Christians, the Druze in Syria. These are all elements that are very worrisome. What Israel is trying to do, and actually quite successfully, is to create a coalition of countries that are pragmatic, that want to fight radicalism.
Who would these countries be?
Well, mainly the Gulf countries. Israel has achieved peace agreements with 6 Arab nations, with Egypt, with Jordan, with the UAE, with Bahrain, with Morocco, and with Sudan. Under this scope, you have an American role with CENTCOM, the Central Command of the US Army, that is actually coordinating cooperation in order to create a more efficient fight against terrorists. But when you have a country like Iran and the Revolutionary Guards that are creating havoc in the region, proliferating weapons of mass destruction, having themselves a program of weapons of mass destruction, this is something that we have to counter. And fortunately, this coalition is working better and wasn't destroyed as a result of this war. People now realize what is the nature of the threat. When you have a country like Iran that is supplying advanced rockets and missiles and drones and the means to produce them to terrorist organizations, this is something that is very worrisome and something that we have to confront. We are confronting them together. And I'm hopeful that when we finish this confrontation with Hamas, and when Hamas is removed from the Gaza Strip, there will be hope for the people to the Palestinians and also to the people of the region, because the only way to create prosperity is by having stability, by promoting the rights of people, by promoting the economy, and by not allowing terrorist organizations to take our lives hostage.
I understand your side of the argument too, Ambassador, but I'm also looking at these numbers, as I mentioned earlier. Over just last 10 days, 322 children killed, 609 injured, over 15,000 children killed. Since the war began, 55,000 killed. And we're talking about children and no aid, no food.
There's been plenty of aid and food.
You explained that earlier, I understand. But again, calls for Prime Minister Netanyahu to respond, giving a huge prize to Hamas. I want to ask you what that is as well. And there is calls again, as I said earlier, Israeli Prime Minister who says that there is not sufficient amount of work done or pressure mounted on Israel. So do you think, with all these talks ongoing, that the world will see a cessation of hostilities? This is a very delicate situation, but the world wants peace.
Talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. The proof is in the pudding. What do you do in order to confront those who want to hijack our lives? This is the real test. And what we have to do is to coordinate the efforts internationally in order to fight this problem of radicalism in a more efficient way, so we don't have a repetition of the situation you have in Gaza, a repetition of the situation you had in Mosul, a repetition of the situation you had in Lebanon when Hezbollah was hijacking the life of the Lebanese people. This is the challenge.
But isn't there a way without targeting civilians?
There is no way when Hamas is taking civilian hostages and hiding behind them. If Hamas chooses to build its headquarters under a hospital, are we allowed under international law to target that? Yes, we are. Hospitals are immune. Hamas should refrain from using them, because from the moment it uses them, they are legitimate military targets according to international law. And people are forgetting that. They only put pressure on Israel because Israel is the side that is more humane, because Israel is the side that actually reacts to criticism. Because Hamas doesn't react to criticism. They don't care. So we have to take that into account. We are here dealing with a situation in which a democratic society is fighting against a force that is dark, that breaches every rule in the book, and instead of concentrating on criticizing the democracy, the world should be concentrating in criticizing and putting pressure on the terrorists.
We've spoken about the region as well, but small states as Sri Lanka and the region, South Asia, is immune to the situation in the Middle East and the trickle-down effects of the war happening there in the Middle East. Supply chains constrained at times, and at other times with hostilities. There are other security concerns in the region. So what kind of cooperation do we see here with Israel also to ensure that states and these our regions are not affected?
Well, first of all, we are doing a lot in order to keep the chains of supply alive, and sometimes there are delays, especially because of what the Houthis are doing, which is, by the way, a war crime. They are targeting our cities and our airports and our civilians with no provocation at all from Israel against them. And these are things that we are going to overcome. But we have to take something else into account, that if we don't deal with the symptoms, with the tactics of terrorists in the Middle East, these tactics will trickle down to our region. We've seen the terror attack in Pahalgam. 2 months before this terrorist attack, a delegation of Hamas came to occupied Kashmir on the Pakistani side. Hamas is giving inspiration to terrorists all over the world. And if we don't deal with that, what we are having in Gaza, we're having in Israel on the 7th of October, you are going to suffer from it as well. So don't think that these conflicts are limited to a certain region. This is a world phenomenon. When you have free societies that want to live according to certain standards, you have radical forces that want to bring them down. We are dealing here with a common challenge. People have to understand that. It's not because of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. No. It's not because of the conflict between India and Pakistan. This is a world phenomenon, the world of terrorism. Those who are against order, those who are against international law, those who are against norms, they want to derail us from building our lives by using tactics that are completely out of question, have to be taken out of the equation. And we have a challenge as free societies to how to deal with that. We have to be creative about it, because we are working with one hand behind our backs. We are limiting ourselves to our rules and to our principles. They are not. You see, this is the challenge.
Some would argue that Israel is not listening to the rest of the world or complying with international law.
We are, and we have proven that time and again, because, as I told you, we use tactics to diminish civilian casualties more than any country in the world. We are acting under a legal system that is accountable, that actually meets international standards, and those that are accusing us are using false accusations, and that is a disgrace. It's a disgrace because they think that they are better than us morally, because they are not facing what we are facing. And this terror is going to attack them as well, eventually. So I think people have to be more prudent, more cautious when they use terms that are being misused to characterize what we are doing.
I'd like to turn to trade as well. With the United Kingdom suspending free trade talks and imposing sanctions on individuals, illegal settler outposts and organizations supporting violence against Palestinian communities in the West Bank, is Israel really concerned about further economic partnership risks, including potential ones with Sri Lanka, and that these could be at risk actually?
Well, first of all, there is no risk whatsoever on the relations between Israel and Sri Lanka.
Or any potential economic trade partnerships for Israel?
No, we are not really concerned. I think that these talks between Israel and Britain were suspended anyway since the new government in Britain came to power. And yes, we are concerned that some countries in Europe want to disturb the relationship between Israel and Europe. I think we have enough friends in Europe to block that. Many countries in Europe actually have seen the results of these radical Islamic elements in their own countries and their own cities. We've seen violent demonstrations and an attack against order in their own countries, intimidation coming from people that do not want to play according to the rules in those countries in Europe. So I am confident that at the end of the day, Israel will not only prevail in this fight against terrorism, but more and more people are going to realize that this is a just fight, that at the end of the day, you have to stand together against terrorism, and those who are misjudging us or are acting according to political considerations because of different kinds of electoral pressures, when this war ends, they're going to realize that actually the Israeli relationship is a relationship that they will want to pursue. And we have seen that for many years. You know, there have been sanction and BDS movements against Israel for the last 20 years. Israel has become only more prosperous. In the last 20 years, we have doubled our GDP per capita, and even during this conflict, now we have reached $57,000 per capita. Our economy is doing well. We are determined to defend ourselves. We are determined to do it according to our standards, and nobody is going to put pressures on us that is going to deny us our basic rights.
Certainly Israel is growing despite the ongoing conflict in Gaza. You've seen 3.4% in growth in the first quarter of this year. The Sri Lankan government too has condemned the civilian deaths there in Gaza. Has there been a conversation around cooperation with Israel, the nature of defense collaboration, and also sending migrant workers amidst the fact that Sri Lanka condemns Israeli actions?
Well, what we have seen mainly is not condemnation but concern. And concern is something natural. Nobody likes conflict and everybody likes peace. I think we are having a very constructive dialogue. And in this constructive dialogue, we are, of course, presenting our case. And we are listening very carefully to our friends because we value the opinions of our friends. And we are also doing cooperation, and that's completely legitimate.
Trade ties, we don't see much trade happening between Sri Lanka and Israel, despite the fact that Israel is making advancements, not just in technology, as I mentioned before, but you've mentioned, Ambassador, a number of areas where Israel has grown over the period of conflict specifically. So how do you think this trade relationship can be developed, especially at a time when Sri Lanka is looking at overcoming a debt crisis?
That's a great question. Look, that's why I'm here. We are working on that. I think that one of the best ways of increasing trade is basically bringing more Israeli tourism to Sri Lanka. I've been in touch with private sector companies since I arrived here, and one of them is interested in opening a direct line of flights between Israel and Sri Lanka. I think that would be great because this will bring many Israelis here, and when the Israelis come here, they interact with Sri Lankans. So this people-to-people contact are going to eventually create more business. So we are interested in not only in guest workers, in importing Sri Lankan produce, whether it be tea or any other things that are being produced in Sri Lanka. We have high-tech cooperation. There are companies that are actually giving outsourcing services to high-tech companies in Israel. So this is something that we have to work on. We're going to work not only with the government, but also through the chambers of commerce. We have a very active chamber of commerce for promoting relations with Asia in general. They are coming to Sri Lanka as well. There is a delegation of businessmen that is being planned for the next few months. So I'm very positive that if we work hard, we will achieve results.
The delegation, what will the focus of this delegation be? Are there specific industries or sectors that are of interest to the Israeli investment community?
Well, generally speaking, we are talking about trade. We are talking about selling technologies, not only in agriculture, but also in communications and other fields. We are talking maybe about joint ventures. As I said, outsourcing some of the services that our high-tech companies need. We are talking about more contracts to expand tourism. So all these things are being discussed, and I hope will materialize.
Your share of trade with the US, some $16.4 billion US, with China 14.7 billion, and we see other countries as well having a larger share of trade with Israel. However, it's insignificant when we look at trade with Sri Lanka. Let's understand, Ambassador, the nature of defense cooperation between Sri Lanka and Israel.
Yeah, well, first of all, there is a difference in the size of the economy. The size of the Sri Lankan economy is not like the size of the American or the Chinese economy, so it would be unnatural to compare Sri Lanka to the United States or China. I think that we have to talk about the merits of what we have in our hands and then try to do our best to promote relations. We are small countries. We are never going to be like America or China. Now, your next question was regarding
defense cooperation, the nature.
For many years, we've been cooperating between our countries in order to tackle, common threats. And I found your officials very satisfied from this cooperation. I think it's going to continue. We have new opportunities to cooperate. I think nowadays people are dealing with things that have to do with exercising your sovereignty over your economic waters. This is something that maybe we can tackle together. Israel is very famous for having a very powerful radar industry, and maybe that is an opportunity we'll have in the future.
Again, going back to the question on trade, we see that Sri Lanka exports diamonds to Israel. But from a value addition perspective, what is the potential? What more should our Sri Lankan entrepreneurs do to be able to penetrate the Israeli market?
Well, first of all, they should visit Israel. And this is something that I encourage every Sri Lankan to do. Both officials, tourists, businessmen. But you mentioned the diamond exchange. Actually, there is an initiative to bring to more cooperation between Israel and Sri Lanka on diamonds. We've been doing that with India for many years. Israel is shifting. The diamond industry in Israel is changing, and a lot of the diamond polishing. Well, in the past we used to have a lot of diamond polishing, but because of the change in the nature of our economy, it's no longer plausible, especially when you deal with smaller diamonds, and these are activities that are being exported to other countries. So this is one of the things that we can do with Sri Lanka.
I think that's all the time we have, but I'd like to ask you, we see a community of Israeli tourists here in Sri Lanka visiting the country with specific interests in areas. Our destination, we have much to offer. Have you had the chance to visit Sri Lanka?
Yeah. Well, I am deeply impressed. For us, coming from a country that has a scarcity of water, it's actually quite amazing to see the quantities of water you have here. The rainforests are beautiful. We used the weekend, we took advantage of the weekend to go to visit the rainforests. The beaches here are amazing. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to go surfing, but I know that many Israelis do, including the girlfriend of my boy, my son, that is a good surfer. So she told us about the great beaches of Sri Lanka. So I hope that next time I come, I'll be able to see more of your country because it's absolutely beautiful.
Certainly. We're talking about value tourists over volume here in Sri Lanka and sustainable levels of tourism. You spoke earlier about potential investments in tourism, collaboration for tourism. Is there an emphasis on this?
Yeah, absolutely. As I told you, first of all, we need a direct flight. This is very important. Most of the Israelis come today through Dubai or Abu Dhabi, do a connection. But if we have a direct flight and we have an aviation company that also markets packages, what is happening in Israel is that because of the increasing level of income, the average family in Israel goes abroad twice a year. So we have, although we are a small country with 10 million, you have at least 20 million vacations that are being marketed for Israelis around the world. So most of the Israelis go to closer destinations that are cheaper, like Greece, Cyprus, etc. But Sri Lanka has a great potential. So imagine that you can take even a small portion of that 20 million, go up from 25,000 to 50,000 or 100,000. That could generate a huge amount of income for the country, and of course could supply a solution for Israelis that want to have a vacation. So I think that we have to invest more in that, and this is exactly what we're doing.
Ambassador, that's all the time, but thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park. It was a pleasure discussing the developments between Sri Lanka and Israel, but at the same time, we hope in the interest of global peace that there will be a solution for the war there in the Middle East.
Hopefully.
The concerns about the the situation, war situation, the footage that we're seeing here has shocked and moved the world. We're really hopeful that there will be an end to the conflict.
Yeah, nobody wants peace more than us. We want to go back to our lives. We want to live our lives peacefully. And this is what we pray for. And we are working to achieve it as soon as possible.
Thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park.
Thank you.
And here at Hyde Park, we were in conversation with the ambassador of Israel accredited to Sri Lanka based in India, Ambassador Reuven Azar. We'll be back next week with yet another discussion here at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.